Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Arthritis Action webinar, Navigating Arthritis, the Young Adult Perspective. My name's Mark. I am the Services Manager for Arthritis Action and will be performing the moderating duties today. So before we get started, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. You'll all be muted throughout the webinar, so if you have any questions for either of our speakers, please type them in the Q&A box and we will endeavour to answer as many of these as possible during the time allotted. But in the event that we do run out of time, we will get back to you with an answer by email within a few days, so please bear with us on those. And finally, just to remind you that this webinar is not a substitute for medical advice, so always consult your doctor or medical professional for any questions regarding your own medical conditions. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. So first up, we have Dr. Wendy Holden. Wendy is an honorary consultant rheumatologist at North Hampshire Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, specialising in arthritis and pain management, and also the medical advisor for Arthritis Action. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, nice to see you, Mark. Thank you.
You too, as always. And joining Wendy today is one of our members and online group regular, Diana Kemp. Hello, Diana.
Hello.
Great stuff. So in that case, I will hand over to you then, Wendy.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana, and for helping us learn a bit more about your journey. So can we just kick off by asking you, when did you first notice that something was wrong?
So in the end of 2018, so I was about 34 at the time, I went to type on my laptop and I took it into the garden to do some work and my fingers wouldn't move to do the typing. I found it quite strange and my hands were a bit painful, but I came back in and did it another day. Then the same thing happened again, just intermittently. And then by Christmas, it was really painful. And my hands just stopped working. And then it was painful every day. I tried to do anything. So I didn't know what was wrong. I went to the doctor, who at first said I had aches and pains. And subsequently, I was arranged to have a blood test. And then I got referred to the hospital as a result of the blood tests.
And
that
then,
was 2019.
So that took quite a long time for you to get to the hospital from the start of your symptoms to get into the hospital. Is that right?
Well, I felt my first GP wasn't taking it very seriously, so I saw a colleague who did refer for the blood tests. But I waited not that long to get to see the doctors, but then when I got to the hospital, they kept sending me for different tests and different scans, and they didn't really make much progress with the diagnosis until it took roughly a year to get a firm diagnosis. But they did start me on DMARDs at my first appointment. So I was already having some medication at that point.
I see. So they knew that something was wrong, but they weren't quite sure exactly what sort of arthritis you have. Is that right?
They hadn't even decided if it was definitely arthritis or if it was all Raynaud's or.
Okay. So what did that feel like, not quite knowing what was going on?
Very stressful. I didn't know. I knew something was wrong. By Easter of 2019, I had to have carers come every day. I couldn't even wash myself. I couldn't get a bra on or get my clothes on or have a bath by myself. It was all in my hands, but you use hands for lots of things.
So that sounds pretty frightening. And what was that like, going to the hospital and having all those different tests and things and not quite knowing what was happening, what was going through your mind then?
I just wanted to know the diagnosis of what was wrong. And when I actually did get diagnosed, it felt like a relief because I already knew I was ill and that my hands weren't working and I'd lost a lot of weight very quickly. So I already knew all that. It was just having a name for it and knowing there's treatment for it was the shift, rather than just this thing that was hurting me that I didn't know what it was. Once I knew it was arthritis, I could start coming to arthritis action groups and arthritis.
And start to try and help yourself, I suppose. So what were the doctors and the professionals like at the hospital with you? What was your experience there of that during that first year?
So in the first year, I probably met 6 or 7 different rheumatologists because there was always different people. And the first one put me on medication for DMARDs, which is an acronym. I can't remember what it's for.
That's disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, yeah.
That one, yeah. So I was on some of those. And then some of them were quite dismissive towards me because I've got a pre-existing mental health condition. So I think they thought it was a bit in my head, not a tissue damage, illness with tissue damage. I think they thought maybe it was me thinking I couldn't do things, or thinking there was pain there.
Right, rather than a rheumatological diagnosis.
Yeah.
Gosh, that must have been horrible. So how did you deal with that situation? How did you get them to pay attention?
Just before Christmas of 2019, I had a registrar doctor, and I told him lots about it, and he said, no, I think this is RA. I do think this is RA. And I arranged to have an ultrasound with the consultant rheumatologist, and she could see from the scan that I had an inflammatory arthritis present, which they hadn't been able to catch in any of the other scans and whatnot that I'd had.
So by that time, you'd had your symptoms for over a year, hadn't you? Hadn't you really?
About a year, yeah, just about a year. And that was very early in 2020.
Yeah.
So then I was given an injection of steroids straight away, and overnight it made a massive difference.
Okay, so that's often how we come to make a diagnosis. If steroids help significantly, then it usually means there's some inflammation going on. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you discover that people are paying attention to what you're talking about and taking. Did you find that people start to take you a bit more seriously?
Yes,
exactly.
they did.
Okay,
And,
so
I started some stronger DMARDs at that point, and that really helped. I had about 9 good months with my hands being not completely normal, but able to do gardening again, and a little bit most of the day. I didn't have to have carers after that. And then 9 months later, it came back. It got my feet. It was in my hands again. And it was just not working, the treatment.
Okay, and then did you start a more advanced treatment at that point? Did you go to biologics then?
Yeah,
once
I did.
The initial treatment had not worked.
So I went to my first biologic, which didn't actually help me at all. And then now I'm currently on my second biologic, and I'm hopefully changing to a third one, which is a work in progress.
So have you had any side effects along the way from the medication, or have you managed that reasonably well?
One of the DMARDs made my hair very thin and falling out, so I wear a headscarf now. There's clumps missing at the back as well, which is quite horrible. Some of them, it gives me ulcers and my tongue cracks.
Right, yes.
With that one.
Yes.
The original DMARD that they gave me that wasn't very strong, I don't even notice if I'm taking it or not. It doesn't make any difference to me. So I take it, but I don't feel it has any side effects or effects or anything.
Fair enough. So it sounds as though the course of your arthritis has been pretty kind of up and down, really. So spells that have been really terrible, and then some spells that were fairly good. So did you go from being a completely able-bodied person then to in terms of your physical abilities then to someone that needed to have carers? What on earth did that feel like?
I used to go to the gym. I used to do loads of knitting, dressmaking, sewing, baking, and then I couldn't do any of that. It was really stressful. All the things I would normally do to anti-stress myself, the things I couldn't do. And it was, someone said to me that the first year is the worst year, and I definitely agree with that. Even though the disease has become more severe in my body and affects more joints, I'm more accustomed to it now, and I know what's happening. It's less scary.
What was the worst thing for you during that time, that first year?
The pain and feeling disbelieved about it. Or disbelieved of the cause of it. I think we knew it was real pain, but they weren't. It's like if I tried harder, I'd be able to do the things that I couldn't do, but I couldn't do them because they hurt and my hands are really stiff and my dexterity is very poor.
Yeah, absolutely. And did that have a knock-on effect on how you're feeling in your spirits and your mental health?
Yes, it made me more depressed, and I felt I was being a bit dismissed due to my mental health and being told sort of, oh, well, if you try harder, even mostly by mental health workers were saying to me that they thought it was in my head, really.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting one. You'd assume it would be the other doctors, wouldn't you? But yeah. Okay, so how are you doing now then, relative to all of that? So this is. No, we got to 2019, didn't we? And then after that, there's something major happened in the world, didn't it? So what was life like during that time when the world
during the
shut down?
lockdowns, I did
Yeah.
shielding during the lockdowns.
Yeah.
The first 8 weeks of it, I was having a lovely time. I just obviously it was terrible what's happening across the country and across the world. But on a personal level, I was just in my garden all the time, planting things, making things grow, painting pots, and doing all the things that I hadn't been able to do for so long. And I find people quite confusing and quite difficult. So I think I did quite well at just not having to deal with people.
Yes, absolutely. Becoming a bit of a hermit, but quite enjoying it. I think lots of
there's a good reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it was terrible for the country. And after 8 weeks, the novelty had worn off and I just felt quite isolated and lonely.
And what about your arthritis during that time? Was it behaving itself, or did things change?
That was when I had the 9 months of it being quite good. That was during the lockdown, so I didn't exactly get to go and celebrate it, but that was good. And then 2022, I caught COVID. That was terrible. I had severe COVID, and it set my treatment back about 6 months in terms of my joints, and everything to do with my RA was just really bad after having COVID. And my rheumatologist said that she'd had a few patients with the same kind of thing, where the catching COVID worsens the pre-existing condition of RA.
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw a lot of that. So very interestingly, a very few people who had COVID found their arthritis got better, which is a surprise. But anyway, I think most people would confidently say it got worse during that time.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you had the support that you needed during lockdown? Because lots of people felt a little bit abandoned by their rheumatology teams.
I felt fine, to be honest.
Okay.
I had phone call for one of the appointments, but that was fine because I'd had previously, they used to phone occasionally to check in between the appointments anyway. So I had one appointment on the phone, and I did hand therapy by telephone, but that was also fine. They sent me a package of goodies like there's therapy sponges and straps and all these kind of things, and we did it on the phone for I think I had about eight sessions. It was really good. It really helped.
Excellent.
And then I did see them face to face quite a lot as well.
Okay, good. So they were very attentive. That's great.
Yeah.
So how are you doing now then? You said that you're going to be switching to another kind of medication. Is that because things are out of control again, or what's happening?
No. So at the moment on my current biologic, my arthritis is sort of behaving itself, but the problem is I keep having to pause it because my neutrophils, my white blood cells, are going too low.
Okay.
So then it's very stop-start. So it'll be quite good for a little bit, and then it will get a lot worse when I stop it. And then eventually my blood test will come back okay, and then I can restart it. But the stop-start problem with it, it's only working when I'm taking it.
Oh, I see. So that's you're a little bit uncertain about where you're going to be on any one day, by the sound of things, how things are going to be. What does that feel like?
It's quite frustrating for me and those around me. I can't make plans very much, or if I'm making plans, I kind of go, I have sort of a plan A and a plan B and a plan C maybe for what I would like to do versus what I can do.
Okay, so what sort of things would that affect? What kind of your social life, presumably?
Yeah, so in my social life, I might say, right, let's go for a coffee. But if I can't get out, come here for a coffee. And if I can't do anything, I'll just postpone it and do it a different day. So that would be sort of the 3 options.
Okay, so you've got a strategy for all of those eventualities, presumably. Okay.
Yeah.
So should we just move on to? I know you're not working at the moment, are you? But you're busy doing all sorts of things, aren't you? You've got a fascinating story, haven't you? Tell us about what you've been doing during all these years.
I've returned to university as a mature student, and I did a degree in Portuguese, and now I'm doing a degree in medical humanities, a master's degree at Birkbeck, University of London. And it's been really good for me. It's part-time, so my BA took me 7 years, and this master's I'm in my 3rd year, nearly finished. And I was getting disabled students allowance, which I wanted to talk a bit about because it might be useful for other people. So
absolutely, you do. So it's the disabled students allowance. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yes, from SFE, Student Finance England. I believe there's similar schemes in the other nations of the UK. So it's allowances. The money doesn't come to me; it goes directly to the suppliers. And I got a lot of IT equipment. So I got a lightweight computer, an ergonomic mouse, a larger screen, a different keyboard, lots of helpful things, and headset and software. Like some of it is voice recognition software that's really good. My computer reads aloud to me. I've got this ergonomic chair that I'm sat on, but it's blurred out so you can't see it. And then it also covers taxis to my university that are subsidised. They subsidise them to make them the same price as public transport is for other people. So I pay £1.75, which is a bus fare, but I get a taxi for that there and back to my university. I have a note taker, so a lady who comes to my lectures with me and sits and takes notes for me because I can't do that. And I have mental health mentoring through that scheme. Trying to think if I've forgotten anything. It's a very helpful scheme. So my university helped me put it all in place.
That's absolutely wonderful. Would you have been able to do that studying if you hadn't had all of that in place, do you think?
No. I certainly, because I don't write anything. I can't type. I still can't type, but it's called Dragon, the software that I use, and Dragon Naturally Speaking, and it just writes it and it learns how individual voices are. So you set up a profile and you have to read a passage out, and it tunes to how you pronounce certain words. So it's quite accurate.
Did that take a long time to get used to that, or was that fairly easy?
They sent me some training. They sent a man to my house for 10 hours of training, actually.
Gosh,
that was good.
Excellent. So that's the disabled students allowance. So anyone that's pursuing further education, presumably with certain qualifying criteria, would be able to apply for that.
And it doesn't matter
university or college.
It doesn't matter if you've already studied before at the same level. They let you get DSA. So with student loans, you can only get it once per level. But with the disabled students allowance aspect of it, you can have it as many times as you do courses.
That's wonderful. So something similar for people at working is called the Access to Work scheme, whereby employers are able to apply for a grant. The employers don't actually have to pay for accessories and things to help people stay at work, but employers apply for a grant, and it's quite a lot of money. So I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's something like £10,000 a year or something like that, to provide equipment to enable disabled people to stay at work, which is excellent. Similar to the sort of equipment you've been talking about, Diana. Okay. So what's your life like now then? How do you spend your days? Obviously you're doing a lot of studying. What else do you do?
So typical day, my carers come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, get me ready for the day. They make my lunch, they wash up, and they help me get dressed. Then after that, I might walk my dog for a bit. I can walk. I can walk to the end of the road and round the little park and back a day, as long as I do it at the right time of day. And then once I've done it once, I can't really do any other walking. So what I'll do is I'll try to plan my day, so the rest of the time I use my mobility scooter. So for example, today I had to go and get blood test. I went on my scooter. And before that, I went to music therapy, which I went on my scooter. And then just before this webinar, I took my dog out on foot. So I do try really carefully to make sure I walk enough on foot, because otherwise I think I'd stop being able to walk as well. I can't do any stairs though, which is quite prohibitive. Luckily, I live in a ground floor flat, which doesn't have any stairs, but it is frustrating because when I go out, I have to take that into account when I go places.
Yeah, absolutely. So does that mean that getting around sort of in the wider, obviously you can go around near where you live. Does that make it difficult for you to travel beyond short distances?
Yeah, I live my life in a 2-mile radius from my flat, actually. I can get in a taxi, but I prefer to be independent and just go on my scooter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What do you think has helped you with all of this? Because you seem really upbeat kind of person. So what kind of thing? How have you kept yourself
I'm not always
Well,
upbeat. I'm not always
you see,
upbeat about it. I get
well,
really
I just
angry
are when we talk.
sometimes.
Yes,
I do get really
absolutely.
angry about it all sometimes. So,
Mm.
I don't want to say advert, but arthritis action support groups make a massive difference to me.
Mm.
What else has helped me? I've got some really supportive friends, including a friend of mine who's a wheelchair user. I'm not sure if she's here tonight. She might be on the webinar.
Mm.
And talking to her has really helped me. She's got a different disability, but just to getting used to things like steps and where you can go, where you can't go, just processing it all has been really helpful. And I'd say my university disability advisor as well, they gave me a lot of support with the stuff that I got. They gave me a lot of pep talks and support as well that was really invaluable to me.
Good, good, good. And what about the arthritis action groups? How have they helped you?
It's just nice to talk to other people who know what it's like.
Hmm. And have
Um,
you, lots of young people with arthritis, have not met any other young people with arthritis? Has that been your experience? That can feel quite
yeah,
isolating.
I
Because
don't
you were only
think I've,
34 when this started, you said.
yeah, I don't
Mm.
think I know, except from the groups, anyone my age with arthritis that I can think of.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
um, on the groups, so there's a group especially for people up to about 40-ish, which is younger people's group, and that is for younger people. And then there's some that are open to all ages that I go to as well. They tend to have a lot more people who are older in them though, because osteoarthritis is obviously quite associated with aging, and that's the main form of arthritis.
Yes, yes, absolutely. What about your things like your family and your friends? So you mentioned your friends as being a good source of support. How have your family taken all of this?
Mostly very well. They've
Hmm.
been supportive. They've helped me financially with getting carers in place. You can't get carers until you've got a diagnosis, but then you can't get a diagnosis quick enough. So they helped me financially with carers in the first year, especially, and subsequently, actually. And then practical things, they're always coming up to help me with stuff because I can't do it. I do worry there'll be a time that my parents are no longer with us because that's how the aging process works. And then I don't have any children. So I do worry about how I'll get by, how I'll cope.
Of
If it was
course.
just me, I wouldn't know what to do with
Yeah.
practical things.
And what about times when you need to ask for help? Has that been an issue for you? Have you felt sort of a bit worried about that?
Uh, Asked who for help, do you mean?
Like, say your family or friends. Have you ever been in the situation, say, where you've needed some help and you weren't quite sure what to do, or did you just have
Yeah,
you got close friends and you can ask them?
most of my friends do understand, most of them, and my family do understand. I've got a boyfriend. He is really good at understanding what I need. Um,
Wonderful.
he observes.
How did you meet him? Where did you meet
uh,
him?
I can't tell you that.
Oh, okay. Top secret. Okay. Now I want to know. You must tell me. Okay, don't tell me that. It's a secret. Okay. Okay. How long have you been together?
Coming up to 3 years.
Excellent. And how and so you had arthritis already when you met him.
Yeah. So I met him about 3 years before we started dating. And then by the time we started dating, I already had the arthritis quite established. So I said to him, oh, quite early on, I'm thinking of getting a mobility scooter. He was like, yes, do that, do that. So he knew that was a good idea for me. And he observes a lot of things, but doesn't comment on them. So he'll sort of pick up on things, but doesn't sort of embarrass me or anything. Like for example, I drink from a cup with two handles, and he would just accept that. He wouldn't say, "Oh, that looks weird," or "Why are you doing that?" or anything like that.
Wow, he sounds like a treasure. So you didn't really ever have to broach that issue of being a
No,
disabled person with him. He took you as you were right from the
yeah,
start.
yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, right, Mark, down the bottom. Do you want to ask some questions now?
Okay, so we don't have anything in the chat box just yet, but if anyone
Okay.
would like to add any questions, oh, we have just had one come in.
Oh, jolly good.
Okay, asking Diana, have you attended a pain management course? So you
Oh,
mentioned
that's a good
several times
question.
that you went you thought medics were being dismissive and implying the pain was in your head. So as a matter of fact, is all pain is received in the head, as it's RA. So basically, I just wonder, have you been on any pain courses? And like, have you tried any of those out before?
I got offered one, and I went to the preliminary session, and it was run by the NHS, but it was going to be all online, and the sessions were going to be 4 hours online, which I didn't think I could cope with because I thought it would be a bit much for me with my mental health condition, basically. So they said I could go again in the next cycle because they run it twice a year once it's back to face, but it hasn't come up again, so I don't know if they're still running it or not. But I did appreciate what you said about all pain is in the head, because that's how pain is formed. I didn't know that, really.
That is 4 hours is a very long time to attend a pain management program, isn't it? In one go. That's really
and it was every week for I think 6 weeks or 10 weeks. I can't remember, but it just felt like, and they said you had to keep your camera on the whole time. It just felt like more than I could cope with.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. We wanted to ask you next about the future then, Diana. It sounds to me like you live very much in the present. Is that right? With sort of taking how it goes from day to day. And
so I do want to study more in the future. I'd like to do a PhD, but I might end up doing some more master's level things first. Not sure how that will go. So that's what I hope for academically.
What subject are you going to do?
Disability studies, which is mainly where my current medical humanities has gone, veered into disability studies, which is great.
Absolutely. And you'll do that at Birkbeck, will you?
I hope so, if they'll have me for some more years. I've been there 10 years this year, so part-time.
Great. What else? Anything else for the future?
I don't really think that far ahead, to be honest. I can't imagine my life in the future particularly easily.
Just take each day as it comes.
There's some more questions in the chat box, I think.
Oh, let's have a look.
There are. So next one to go through. So what aids or other things have been most useful for you as a young person with RA, Diana?
So as a young person, well, the first thing that I got that was useful was a dog lead that goes across my body and doesn't rely on my hands. And that was the very first gadget or aid that I got, because I couldn't securely walk my dog on a normal lead anymore because my hands weren't working. So that was my first thing. In terms of being a young person, I've got a hairdryer stand. That's quite useful because you can put your hairdryer on it and then you can just sit down and wiggle your head around a bit and it dries it. That's quite good. I've got lots of kitchen gadgets. Cups with 2 handles, foam rollers that I put around cutlery, but also pens and pencils, like put a bit of foam on them. In my bathroom, I've got a wall-mounted dispenser for shampoo and conditioner and shower gel, because then I don't have the problem of dropping bottles on my feet, because that was a problem at one point.
What about, have you had some physiotherapy, and what was the most useful?
So I'm on a waiting list for more physiotherapy. I've had a session where they sent me some videos to do, and it does make a difference. I've had formal hand therapy properly through the hospital. That was really good. Where the hand therapists are like extra qualified physios or occupational therapists who do special qualifications in hands. That was good. Yeah, but I'm on a waiting list for better physio, like more physio.
And it sounds as though you try and stay as active as possible, which is obviously, although it's a challenge, it's really, really important, isn't it, to stay as strong as you can, just to
pacing
keep your
is
muscles
really
going.
important. Pacing's really important. So I think that's why I like my mobility scooter, because I can calculate almost, I know how many steps I can do, not steps, but I know how far I can walk in a day and what my limits are. And then I can just use the scooter to make it so that I don't have to walk any more than what is good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. We've got
Yeah.
a few more questions for you as well. So this one's kind of for the pair of you as well. So would you say that biologics works better than DMARDs, for example, with a range of fewer side effects?
That's a tricky one. Typically, the way that arthritis is treated is that people with early arthritis are treated with DMARDs, and then once they've failed that for a while, then they would go onto a biologic. So often, by the time people that get onto a biologic, they may well have had their condition for years, or minimum would be about 6 months. So in other words, by the time they get onto a biologic, they've had their arthritis for a long time, and so the chances of them getting a good result are less than it would have been if they'd started that at the beginning, if you like. So biologics are only available for people who have severe arthritis. They are generally well tolerated, probably better than disease modifying drugs, but it's difficult to say if they're actually more effective. The numbers of people going into remission on a biologic, in other words, not having any symptoms or signs of arthritis, is around about 30% in all the trials. So not massively excellent, should we say, but they do work very well for some people. Hard to say though, and some people on DMARDs do absolutely fine and don't have any side effects at all. So the most important thing is to get the arthritis treated as soon as possible, I think.
Great. So we have a sort of someone in the chat has on the questions has mentioned they were diagnosed at 21 and now 28 and find that weight gain's a big struggle. And is this something you've experienced, Diana? And if so, how do you cope with it?
I wasn't sure if you meant weight gain was a struggle, as in putting on weight or losing weight.
No, I think they say the weight gain has been a struggle. So I'm
okay.
sorry, apologies for assuming. I assume that they have been gaining weight.
Oh, so when I first got the first symptoms, I lost a lot of weight very quickly to the extent it was quite worrying for me and people around me. And I didn't know what I was doing differently because I was just eating when I was hungry. I was eating cake and stuff, and I just kept losing weight and weight. So that was just my experience.
I think weight gain is a real problem. I mean, it's hard enough if you can move around to keep your weight down, isn't it, a lot of the time, let alone if you can't move very much. So I think the important thing is just to try and eat as sensibly as you can. Obviously, nothing is forbidden, of course, because that will just make you want to eat more chocolate. But just eating sensibly and following a healthy diet is the way to go. And then just moving when you can, I think it is, but it is a struggle. You're right. I mean, there's only really one way, and that's to either eat less or move more. And but it just is not easy for some people.
I would
I think
say
it's also important not to beat yourself up about it. Do you know what I mean? Body image and all that is very, we're all obsessed with body image these days, but we really don't need the pressure of thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to lose weight. It's too much. Sorry, Diana.
I was going to say preparing food is also an issue for me because sometimes you'd like to eat a salad, but it's a lot of preparation involved. So you might just get McDonald's instead. I had McDonald's for lunch actually. But yeah, it can be. It's not just what can I eat, it's how can I get the food that I want to eat? Like, how can I get it ready and what preparation does it take? And can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a good question there. I see how to get support. I was refused PIP. Nobody believes me. I can't work. I can't cook. That is a very, very common problem. There was something in the paper about that the other day, wasn't there, about all the people that are refused PIP. Often the initial assessors that do PIP are not necessarily medically qualified. That's one thing. And I think one of the issues is that a lot of people, when they fill in the PIP form, are optimistic. You have to fill it in on your worst day. I'm sure you would agree with that, Diana, that you have to be honest when you fill in your PIP form. It's very challenging and you may well need some help filling it in. If you think you would qualify for PIP and you've been refused, you just have to go to appeal. Many people have their decisions overturned when they go to appeal. So I just keep at it, I would say, with that.
Okay, great. We had one interesting question for you, actually, Diana. It's quite specific for you, this one. So in what ways has the material you're learning in your medical humanities course helped you in your journey with rheumatoid arthritis? Has it helped with the physical, emotional challenges? And do you recommend any readings from your coursework?
So I would say the course has maybe kind of questioned the authority of medicine, because it's quite easy to think of experts and then people below them being their patients. And I don't think that anymore. So that challenging the hierarchy issue has come up a lot. I forgot the second half of the question.
If there's anything you can recommend, you can always send those to me.
Readings. So there's a picture that I thought was quite interesting. You can just Google for it, called The Gout, and it was made in 1700s. And it's a picture of like a devil biting into a foot.
Yeah.
And it's quite I think rheumatology, my friend said they use it at conferences. It's like an illustration. And I came across that on my course. But I think when it was made, they called all forms of arthritis gout because they didn't know them apart. They didn't know how arthritis come in different types. So it was always called the gout. And I just thought that was an interesting arthritis related image.
Excellent. In other words, have you tried anything like acupuncture or osteopathy specifically?
For me, I've had acupuncture in the past for different unrelated conditions. I found it very painful, even though people say it's not going to hurt, it really did hurt. And I haven't tried osteopathy.
Great. We've got someone shouting out for your they hear with the hand pain and are getting Dragon training software next week. So
that's good.
More to join that club, which is great.
I'd say with Dragon, a good thing is you can teach it as well. So, for example, I had to write an essay on socialising. That didn't come knowing that word, but I just had to spell it out to it, and then it knew it. So however many times I said it in my essay, it would just get it right after the first time that I trained that word. Which is useful if you need niche vocabulary. It's quite helpful.
Oh yeah, because it can learn. There's a question there about osteoarthritis for younger adults. I completely agree. The questioner says there is nothing for us. All we are told is that it's just wear and tear, and there is nothing to help us as a younger adult. I 100% agree with that. You go to the doctor with a knee pain, say you're diagnosed with osteoarthritis when you're 35 or 40. And basically it's come back when you want a new knee. I totally agree with that it's a really, really underrepresented area. I would say come to Arthritis Action, learn what you can do to help yourself. But I think we should be looking more into that as well. I completely agree.
Yeah, definitely. Along the lines of that as well. I mean, I was going to mention at the end, and I will do anyway, but we have a whole sort of selection of things like, exercises, various articles, and loads of resources that can be very useful to kind of help improve your physical strength when it comes to things like osteoarthritis, because sort of long and short of it being that, the stronger the muscles are surrounding joints, the more sort of stability they can have. So that would be sort of a very useful avenue for anyone with osteoarthritis.
Absolutely. There's lots that can be done, but you have to do it all yourself, basically. Which is all right. Have you had wax for your hands, Diana? Have you had wax treatment for your hands? Yes.
I love it.
Works really well, doesn't it? Yeah.
So wax therapy is a little machine thing that looks like a slow cooker, and it's got melted wax in it. And then you dip your hands in or your feet in and cover them in this hot wax. Then you put these like bags over your hands and put them in these little mittens and leave it there for 20 minutes. And the heat from the wax really penetrates deep into the joints, and it does provide relief. I really like it.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an old-fashioned treatment, but a really good one, isn't it? And yeah.
If I go out and I get cold, because I've got Raynaud's as well, so if I go out in winter and I'm just in so much pain when I get in, that's when it's really good to do it.
Excellent. There's another question for you, Diana, which is what was your career before RA? So did you have to give up your career or anything?
I didn't have a career because I was already not working due to my mental health condition. So I didn't have a career. I was midway through my BA when the RA started. So I guess it changed my approach to being a student quite a lot because I wasn't typing anymore.
Thankfully for the Dragon software now then. We're doing a lot of plugs for them, it seems, but I have heard other people sort of shout for them as well, so that's great. A question for you, Wendy. So if biological medicine doesn't work, is there any alternative treatments available?
That's a tricky one. So there are loads and loads of different types of biologics. You're going to number 3, Diana, but there's a lot more than 3 out there. So if you have been through lots and lots of different types of biologics, and that hasn't worked, you are not in a good position in terms of inflammatory arthritis. However, there are lots of things that can help you with pain management. Some of the things we've alluded to, dealing with, for exercise, for example, healthy eating, dealing with your mental health, looking after your sleep. Those things are all really, really important. I think it was the question about alternatives as well.
So yes, let me bring it back up. Lots of questions here. Good stuff, everyone.
Yeah,
what alternative treatments are available?
If you email me, I'll answer that one directly. We need some evidence-based treatments are lacking, shall we say? But I will answer that separately. Yeah.
Yes. Also, apologies to anyone out there. There are some which are quite sort of long, complex, and very specific in here. So we will endeavour to reply to everything afterwards if it is going to be sort of too long-winded an answer as well, I'm afraid as well. So, got time for a couple more. So, Dan, have you tried any infrared light? Have you tried an infrared light machine?
No, I've not tried one of those. I've heard that they work because it's heat, and it doesn't necessarily benefit what particular type of heat, but it's heat. So, I mean, heat helps me in general, but I haven't tried one of those, no.
Wendy,
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just the heat rather than the infrared. So I would stick to heat and not spend a lot of money on that. Yeah.
Okay, so time for one or two more. So bear with me. Like I said, we will do our best to send answers to any of these shortly after the webinar within a few days. Okay, so I've had long periods of losing weight when in a lot of joint pain, and in part due to losing interest in food, and still find day to day what food fancies varies. Is this common? And is it second, they're quite shaken now by how severe your RA is. Is this common, uncommon, or rare?
That was true to my experience. I lost before I was getting treatment for the RA. It's not true anymore, but when I first got symptoms and wasn't diagnosed, I just lost a lot of weight very quickly.
Okay, great. And so let me see. Finally, time for one more, and we will wrap up for the evening. Wendy, this is like quite a nice, easy one to end on for you, I suppose. Is turmeric or cod liver oil any good for inflammation?
Well, that's a good question. The jury is out on that one. Turmeric, you would have to have enormous amounts for it to make a difference, although it does have some anti-inflammatory properties, but you would have to have more than is humanly possible to consume. Omega-3 fish oils may help inflammatory arthritis, so not specifically cod liver, not very eco-friendly, but omega-3 fish oils, yes.
Okay, great. And I think so. Excellent job, you two. We've managed to get through everything that we can today. So, just want to end with a couple of extra little bits before you leave. So, if you would like any more information, on arthritis and what we do, please do visit our website, which is www.arthritisaction.org.uk. We have a number of useful resources that will help you, self-manage your condition, including information on exercise, diet, well-being resources, and specifically for this webinar, we have a dedicated young adults hub as well. So a video of this webinar will be made available shortly on our YouTube channel. We'll get that up as soon as we can, and we'll send you an email with a link to it once it is available. Also, after this webinar, there will be a little survey that will pop up. So we'd really appreciate your thoughts, and to add in, anything, give us your thoughts and feedback on what you thought about it, what you liked, what you didn't like, and so on. We'd love to hear everything that you have to say so we can make these as good as possible. And finally, I want to just say a big thank you to Wendy and Diana for giving us your time and answering all those questions so well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today, and we really appreciate it. Hopefully see you all soon.
Bye.